All right. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited for this conversation today because Kelsey is someone who deeply inspires me and motivates me in such fascinating ways because you're in this arena of advocacy and activism, but you're also a human in all of it. And you speak from your own lived experience so beautifully. You're on board of directors for the Momia syndrome and a student and doing activism and advocacy for Mobius syndrome. And you're pretty much on the go all of the time and have a lot. And it's really cool to see what it is that you're doing. So I want to thank you for spending this time with me and having this conversation. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And I so appreciate you thinking of me and wanting to listen to my story and share that with others. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Kelsey and I met 5, maybe 6 years ago now at SAIT in Calgary. And our paths crossed, I think, through the kind of student experience and wanting to bring awareness to different things, because I was a really big advocate of not only mental health, but sexual awareness and all of these different things and working in that arena. And you and I just connected right away, and you were really active in that scene. So, without further ado, tell us more about you. Tell us a little bit about your story, who you are, and the work that you're doing now, and what it is that you're bringing awareness to.
Sure. So yeah, like you said, we met at SAIT all those years ago now. And I was in the journalism program. And I think we met because you were the VP of student life, and so and I wanted to do an event that would raise awareness about Momia syndrome. So we worked together on that, and then just stayed in touch over the years, and so now that seems like a different lifetime, honestly. It was so long ago, and so much has changed since then. I graduated SAIT. I went on to the University of Calgary. I got my communications degree, and then now I'm a grad student in getting my master's of intercultural and international communications. So, um, so much has changed in the last 5 to 6 years, and I really, my life is centered around raising awareness of Mobius syndrome, and not only Mobius, but all other disabilities. There's so much stigma and misinformation around disability, and I really think that it's my, not my job, but it's my kind of role as someone who has a disability to
Mm.
speak up and use my own life experiences to raise awareness and break the stigma, and just make sure that everyone has equal opportunities and just can live the life that they're meant to live.
Mm.
Um, because our lives, everyone has a purpose, and everyone brings something to society. So I think that it's just really important for people to know and to understand disability. So that's that's kind of how I have evolved. And yeah, I it's really important to me, and it's a passion to raise awareness. So I'm just thankful for platforms like this to be able to speak out.
Absolutely. And I think that's really beautiful that you make the distinction between saying it's not my job, but it's more of your kind of like sacred duty. Like it's your lived experience and it's something that's so important to you that because you have the voice and you have the capacity to share this, you're speaking for those who can't. And I think that's so beautiful to give voice to those who maybe don't have the resources, the capacity, the platform, the whatever it is. So to have someone like you willing and able to speak up and to bring this awareness and education is just so important. And I really love that you can acknowledge that it is big work, but it has to be done because we need more inclusivity. We need more accessibility for all. So when you look at this, what would you say is the top maybe miscommunication or misunderstanding or misconception around disability in general, really? Because I think it's such a big arena and we could narrow it down and we will narrow it down. But I think for people listening to realize what these misconceptions are, what would you say was one of the biggest ones that you see?
Um, I mean, I don't want to speak for others, but personally, the biggest thing that I have experienced is just people assuming things about me based on based on appearance. And I think that when people see someone who looks different or sounds different, they automatically think that they have a mental disability as well, or an intellectual disability. And and I say this every time. There's no issue with if for people that have intellectual disabilities. I have lots of friends who do. I know a lot of people who do. That's not the issue. The intellectual disability is not the issue. The issue is people assuming things about people um, that they have no idea. So, I mean, so many times people have said to me things like, wow, can't I can't believe people like you go to school. Or um, when I used to work retail, and I had people come up to me so many times and say things like, wow, it's so nice that they hired people like you here. And it's like, what do you mean by people like you? I still don't really understand
Yeah.
totally what that means. And I think that people just have these misconceptions, and they think that people with disabilities they're not able to do the things that the average person does because they look different or they sound different or whatever. And
Yeah.
that's just not the case. And you can't, like, just by looking at someone, you have no idea what they are capable of or what their struggles are or anything like that. So, um, for me, the biggest misconception is that people just assume that I can't do things or that I can't do what um other people do. So that's really what I'm trying to break down, and that's the stigma that just sticks, and it's unfortunate that people still think that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, because what I hear in that is like this othering. Like you look at something and you're like, "Oh, that's not how I look or that's not how I whatever, whatever." It's different. And
That's
then
a
there's this separation and it's still so I'm curious because like how do you handle those moments? Because I can't imagine what it would feel like to really be met with that on so many different levels and layers. Like the schooling that you talked about, when people say, I can't believe people like you can go to school, or it's so nice to see them hire people like you. Like hearing that term, which just, it makes my whole body cringe.
Yeah.
How do you handle that in the moment? Because I think there's such a beauty and grace to the way that you navigate these things. So I would really love to hear how it is that you navigate that in the moment.
I it's that's a difficult it's a difficult question. I mean, people, when people I have one incident that really sticks out, and I was at work a couple years ago, and someone came in and they said they they said they came up to me and they were like, oh, my my friend works here. She has a learning disability, and I was like, oh, that's like, all right, that's cool. Like, and that's when she said, it's so nice that they hire people like you here. And I kind of, it just kind of hit me out of nowhere. And like, I'm not expecting that.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just said, like, what do you mean? And she was like, well, you have a learning disability too, right? And I was like, no. And she was like, oh, well, I just assumed because, like, the way you learn, I just assumed that you have a learning disability. And I was like, I, I, I mean, when you're at work, you can't really like get into it with someone.
Yeah.
But all I said was, you should never assume what people can or can't do, or what their struggles are, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't assume someone by looking at them. And this person was completely just totally taken aback by that, I think.
Mm.
And I think it you just have to like not get angry, which is something that I still struggle with. But it's about not getting angry. It's about educating. Because I mean, if I just got angry and walked away, that person isn't going to learn anything. And um, so they're gonna do the same thing to, the next person that they see. So it's like if you really break it down and meet someone where they're at and say, no, that's not the case at all. Um, maybe they'll think about that, and then maybe the next time that they see someone who, like looks different or sounds different or whatever, they won't assume
Mm.
things about them. And throughout my last like 5 years or whatever of advocacy, that's I think the biggest point that I'm trying to make is that you can never know what who someone is just by looking at them. And I always say that, don't never judge someone based on appearance,
Yeah.
because that doesn't tell you anything. So that's really, I
Mm.
think, how I deal with that is trying to make people aware of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's so powerful because it's a cliche for a reason when we say don't judge a book by its cover. It's like it's a cliche because it's true. It's a thing that we really need to hone in on because so many of the issues that we see, whether it be ableism, racism, sexism, ageism, like any of the isms that we look at, it comes down to that snap judgment, that momentary assumption and judgment of someone based on these preconceived notions that we have in our head. And it's such a narrow-mindedness. And I think it's really beautiful that education is your focal point and there isn't any shame or blame in it. It is really a space of, we need to do better. And in order to do better, we need to learn and we need to have these uncomfortable conversations and point out these other ways of being and thinking. So when you look at the ways in which you are doing your activism and your advocacy, what's been the most exciting part of it? What have you loved the most about diving into the activism world and actually making these steps towards change?
I think the most exciting, the most gratifying thing is when people say to me, they send me messages on social media or whatever, they say, wow, I've never heard of this. I've never heard of Momia syndrome. Thank you for educating me. And over the last couple of days, January 24th was Momia Syndrome Awareness Day. And so I started like a month-long campaign to lead up to that day. And so on social media, I posted about it mostly every day and had conversations with people. And I got so many people sending me messages and tweets and whatever and saying, thank you so much for educating me. I had no idea what this was. I went to Google and I found out more about it, or I went to the Momia Syndrome Foundation page and I learned more, and it's so interesting. And thank you for educating me. That is those are the most profound words I think that I heard, because people took the time. Not only did they take the time to listen to what I was saying, but they also educated themselves because they wanted to know more. So that's what really drives me, and that's what keeps me going, is when people say, because of you, I educated myself, or I learned something new, and I am now more aware, and I won't look at people in the same way. And that's what means the most, and that's honestly what drives me, and that's why I keep going. Because in advocacy, sometimes you feel like you hit a wall and no one's listening anymore and whatever. But then you get these messages from people who are like, thank you so much for educating me. And I mean, even if it's just one person, that one person, you have impacted them, and that one person will now hopefully they will take that message forward and they will educate others around them. So it's not always just the one person, it's the whole community as well. And so, I mean, even just when I hear one person say to me, you have changed how I think about people, or you have educated me, that's really the goal, and that is what keeps me going in this fight. So, yeah, that's what means the most, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, because that's exactly it. It's those ripple effects. If one person hears what you're saying, they might then educate, but they also might show up differently in their life and lead by that example. And
Yeah,
that's so,
exactly.
so powerful. So let's take a moment and educate people. Tell us about Mobius syndrome. Give
Sure.
us an education.
So Momia syndrome it's certainly rare. It only affects about two in a million births.
Wow.
And um there's about we estimate there's about 5 to 7,000 people with it worldwide. So
Wow.
very rare. And it affects the cranial nerves, so the nerves in your brain, they don't form properly. So, and the nerves in your brain control facial movement, they control everything basically within your body. And um, so loneliness causes facial paralysis. That is the hallmark of loneliness. Um, it can cause like speech problems. Um, it can cause feeding problems. Um, so like babies born with Momia syndrome, they can't suck. So they you don't have a facial muscle.
Mm.
Um, so some people with Mobius have feeding tubes or breathing tubes. Some people have um, small like um, malformed hands or they're missing limbs. So it really affects. The thing with Mobius is that it's such a spectrum. Some people aren't affected so much, like they might only have half um um like unilateral facial paralysis,
Right.
and that's the only thing that is affected. And some people are very affected and have complex medical needs.
Mm.
Um, so it's really a spectrum, and yeah, it's neurological and it's congenital, which means you're born with it. Like you don't acquire it sometime in life. Like you're born with it, and yeah, it's um, like I said, it's super rare. And I mean, not even I've been to so many medical professionals who have not heard of it. And if they have heard of it, they've never seen anyone with it.
Wow.
Um, that's something that I have experienced many times. Yeah, so like I said, it's neurological. It's not like um, it doesn't cause normally doesn't cause intellectual
Mhm.
differences. However, some people with Mobius are on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's essentially in a nutshell what Mobius.
Wow. To have some doctors that haven't even heard of it. Holy.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's, and I mean,
yeah,
that's exactly why we need awareness, because even some
exactly.
doctors don't know. So we
Right,
need to be
exactly,
talking about this. So,
exactly.
wow, that's something so imperative, because I think when you say it is on that spectrum, I think that's the importance of these types of conversations, is because so often we're told about the most extreme. We're told about like the extreme of, let's say, manic depressive, the extreme of Asperger's being on the autism spectrum, the extreme of this, the extreme of that. And what we forget is that with over 7 billion people in the world, we are all on a spectrum of something. We are all on this continuum of experiencing life in such different ways. So we all have these differences and these nuances. And I think that's where we can really start to appreciate that all of these things are what makes us unique. And it doesn't mean that it makes us any better or worse or somewhere in between. It just is. And we need to learn how to be able to have these conversations and normalize differences so that everyone's feeling supported in the ways that they need to be supported. So within that, a little bit of a kind of different direction, but not too much. I'm so curious to know how it is that you keep, I guess, your sense of self in all of this, because activism and advocacy can be so exhausting because, like you said, you can hit that wall where you feel like nobody's listening, no change is being made. This is pointless almost. How do you keep your sense of self and your sense of power within you? And how do you top yourself back up so that you can keep doing this work? What does your practice look like in that?
Um, that's a really good question too. Um, I think my sense of self honestly is fully based on um knowing knowing what my passion is and using that to enact change. And I mean, yeah, advocacy is really hard, and I do feel like a lot of people aren't listening. And I feel like, you know, there are other messages that are getting attention, but but the message that people with disabilities are trying to get across isn't being heard so much, and that takes a toll because, like, I just sometimes feel like no one's listening. I'm not changing anything, whatever. And so yeah, you get down sometimes, but then you say, you know what? It doesn't. Eventually, people will listen on a mass scale, but to get there, you need to touch um, individual people who will then make a louder noise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's just about knowing your limits and knowing how to step away sometimes and say, you know what, I can't do this right now. I can't do this today, but maybe tomorrow I will go back out and I will try and get my message across.
Mm.
And I had for Momia Syndrome Awareness Day, for example, um, I reached out to so many media organizations, and I said, hey, like, would you cover this story at all? I've worked in media, so I know, like, kind of how it works, but um, I didn't hear back from any of the media outlets, and that was a little disheartening.
Yeah.
Um, but but at the same time, I had people reaching out to me on their own, saying how much they appreciate my advocacy or how I educated them. And again, those are the things that keep me going. And if no one was saying that, no one was listening, um, I think it'd be a lot tougher. But now that I have kind of built my social media following, not that I am like an influencer in any way, but over the years I have built kind of a following, and people are listening, and I know because they reach out to me and they tell me that. And
Mm.
um, for Wellness Awareness Day, one of the things that we do is ask people to wear purple because purple is the color of the Momia's foundation. And I had perfect strangers take me in posts on Twitter, like say with a picture of themselves wearing purple.
Mm.
Um, I went for a run this morning and I wore purple for you. Like, just stuff like that. People that I don't even know, they have seen my story and they have picked it up as their own and they have ran with it and they want to raise awareness too now. So it's really, it's just knowing that everything you do has purpose. And even if you don't feel like it, someone is listening. Someone somewhere is listening and they are getting your message
Mm.
and they want to share that as well. So I think even when I feel like there's no point, I'm not getting anywhere, I have to remember that there is someone out there who is hearing what I have to say and they are getting the message. And my university, they reached out to me on Twitter a couple months ago. They saw my post and they saw that I was a student there. And they reached out to me and asked if they could do a story on me to tell
Mm.
my story, whatever. And that was so, like, just incredible to me that they saw this and they wanted to tell my story to their audience and to the student community and whatever. And that really kind of changed how I see things too. Like,
Yeah.
people are listening and they want to pick up the story too. So, um, yeah. So I think just knowing your worth and knowing that you are making a difference is how I keep that sense of passion and fire to keep going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much in that because it is that moment of reminding yourself that it is a slow road and it is something that we have to chip away at and we have to work at, and it's progress, and we slowly, our message seeps out and touches the people that it needs to touch. So when you're raising this awareness and you're working in this space of advocacy, what is the main intention? Is the main intention education so that people understand it? Or is there something more that you're working towards in this arena of advocacy and activism?
Yeah, I think the reason behind it for me is awareness and education and to make the world more and to make society more inclusive and understanding, and so that the people with Momias or any other disability really
Mm.
don't have to go through the same situations that I have seen myself in.
Yeah.
Um, the people who, you know, say the people who like say comments when you're walking down the street, or the people who say like, "Wow, you go to university? That's I didn't think people like you could do that." Um, but it's things like that, or it's not even that. It's the people who they go to a job interview and the employer has some kind of unconscious or conscious bias, and don't like so many times it people have inaccessibility to the jobs to equal opportunity. So I think that it's about awareness for sure and education, but it's about making people more aware that people with disabilities, they just want equal opportunity. Like, it's nothing, we're not asking for a lot. Like, it's basically like, it's equal opportunity, and it's to look at us as people, just people, not as people like you.
Yeah.
That's the end goal here, I think, and it's to just, and it's to support people as well, people with disabilities, to support them and make them feel like they can go out and they can live the lives that they want to live, and there are no limitations. And that's, those are the most important things to me, personally.
Basic human decency, I think, is all you're asking for.
Exactly.
And that should not be so much to ask.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man. So for those listening, if they could do, like, let's say maybe 3 things right now that could start making their circle of influence more inclusive, safe, and accessible, what 3 things can we do to start making steps towards inclusion and safety?
I think number one is just when you see someone who looks different, sounds different, whatever, don't assume anything. They are, just look at them as a person. Two, I would say educate your circle and educate yourself on disabilities. Educate your kids. I think that's one of the biggest suggestions that I have. It starts young. Like, you have to tell kids that, like, some people look different, whatever. Like, that doesn't make them different. It doesn't mean that you should treat them different, whatever. The awareness starts young. And I think the third thing is, just listen. Listen to people with disabilities. We need more diverse voices in the media, in movies and TV and music, like all these arenas. We need more diverse voices, and like support people with disabilities that want to be actors or models or whatever, and normalize disability, I guess, is really what I'm getting at. And I see so many movies and TV shows that totally depict disability in such a dangerous way. And even like there was a movie that just came out not long ago, and the villain had like a facial difference, and that's why it was scary, because it had a facial difference. But it's about not it's about representation, really. So representation is everything. You have to have people with disabilities in all facets of life, in TV, film, whatever, to normalize disability. And I think that, again, representation is everything. And if you represent disability in a negative light, like so many movies do, and even TV shows, when you think about the villain usually has some kind of facial difference or something that makes them scary. So, or it seems scary, and that's what needs to change. And I mean, like I think about even The Lion King, which is like one of my favorite movies. But you think about Scar, the villain, he has a facial scar, and that's not what makes him like a villain, but that's the aesthetic that makes him like dark and scary and whatever. And it's like that's the message that we are sending.
Absolutely.
Everyone. So it's like just representation in media is so needed.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Like I think of The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the ones that just always broke my heart. Even as a kid watching it, I was like, that doesn't seem right. Like this, it's the dynamic that's created, and we're trained subconsciously and consciously to fear difference and to fear other. And I think you're so right in the simplicity of don't assume anything, educate yourself, listen to the people that you're trying to make assumptions about, and then have that space of representation. Whose voice are we not hearing? There's this one quote that I heard from a previous podcast episode, and it's nothing about us without us. And I think that is just so, like, when I heard that, I was like, that is everything. How, yes, because that's it. We're making movies and TV shows and all of these different arenas, and we're trying to depict what we perceive to be this theme of this, the villain or the different person, like whatever it is. But we don't have the conversation of the person that we're depicting. And I think that's just so backwards. That, and it's the same thing with sexualization of women. It's the same thing with race. Like we always depict the Black guy as the gangster. And it's like, well, I know a lot of really scary white people. Like, why aren't we talking about that as well? I think representation is so, so important. So I have one more big question for you. I have a feeling where you're going to go with this.
Okay.
But I'm excited to see how you word it and how you help us understand it. So when you think of either your local community or you think of the world as a whole, the global scale, what is the one big change that you would want to see made, or the one big norm that you would want to see disrupted, and why?
Wow. So again, I think that I feel like I've said this like 100 times in the last like half hour, but I think that just the equal opportunity and an equal playing field for everyone, regardless of difference, disability, and that doesn't only go for people with disabilities, but like you said, it goes for race and age and gender and everything. Like everyone deserves an equal opportunity, equal playing field, and no one is better or worse than anyone else because of their circumstance. And that's what it is. It comes down to circumstance, and I like just feel like so many people get judged and they miss out on so many opportunities because this world is not accessible for everyone. There are certain types of people who just get kind of outcasted, and that is the sad reality of the world that we live in. So I would like to see the world a global scale to be just an equal opportunity and to have people of every walk of life
Mm,
represented and normalize disability, normalize people who don't look exactly like everyone else.
yeah,
And again, representation. Again, representation is everything. And I really, that's something that I really stand by. That's why I do what I do in terms of advocacy, because I know that the playing field right now is not equal, and it's not, we
yeah,
don't have equal opportunity,
no,
and people have conscious or unconscious bias, and
yeah,
that's what needs to go.
absolutely.
So, so yeah, so I mean, the one change I would like to see is acceptance for all and equal opportunity for all.
That is a world I want to live in.
Same.
Absolutely. Yes. So we'll just keep working to make that happen. And I really, really, really appreciate the work that you're doing. I know that words can't express it enough because it's invaluable. The work that you're doing is priceless. It's needed in so many different arenas because even with the rarity of the condition that you're speaking to, everyone can benefit from a more equal and diverse world. So the work that you do is even bigger than we can even imagine. So thank you so much for continuing to show up in that arena, for continuing to do this work and having these conversations. It's so greatly appreciated. And I can't wait to see what you do. I can't wait because we're going to link out to all of your social media, anything that you want linked out to, so people can follow and figure out where you're headed and what it is that you're up to and how they can support you because it's so needed. So thank you, Kelsey. Thank you.
Thank you for this amazing platform and for wanting to tell my story. You know, it's so, it, like you said, it's so needed, and people with diverse voices really need to have their voices heard. So thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it more than you know.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.